All right, so this is the video for the homework answer key that you need to do. So we're only going to be doing questions 1 through 4. If you're using from the packets, you don't have to worry about the questions that come after that. And this is lesson 6. So number 1 says, what is the period of the following function? Now, the one thing that we should remember is the form y equals a sine b x minus c plus d. This one only has the a and the b values. A, remember, is the amplitude, and b is the frequency. I'm looking for the period, which is neither. However, the period, we should remember the formula is 2 pi divided by the frequency. So since the frequency is the b value and b is 7, our period is 2 pi divided by 7. Part B, what does the period tell us about the graph of the function? Well, this is essentially just asking you for the definition of period. It tells us that it will take a length or distance of 2 pi over 7 to complete one full cycle. All right, question 2. What is the period of the function shown in the graph below? Period, remember, is how long it takes to complete one full cycle. Now, one full cycle of sine, we should remember, looks like this. So if I go back to the picture here that I highlighted in green, this is one full cycle of sine. As soon as we go past, that is a second cycle now. I, for this question, definition of period is just how long it takes to do the one cycle. So here is my one cycle. It was a distance of pi. Part B, state the amplitude. Amplitude, remember, is the height from the midline. So for this one, let's first erase that so we can see better. Here is your midline. So zooming in, your height from the midline. Up here is the 1, which means this dash, which is where my height is hitting, would be 1/2. So my amplitude is 1/2, or 0.5. Question 3 is asking you to sketch one cycle. So remember, that was that 4-step process. Whoops. Half pi. So the a value here is -4. And we multiply sine's critical points. Remember, that was from that table. I highlighted them. You're going to multiply each of them by -4. So -4 times 0 is 0. -4 times 1 is -4. -4 times 0 is 0. -4 times -1 is +4. And then 0 again. If there was a vertical shift, something being added on the end or subtracted, you would apply it to these points. But there isn't, so these are my y's. If you would like, we can create a table like we did in the lesson. These are the y's that we're going to be graphing. To come up with the x's, remember that was the rest of f pi. F just asks for the frequency. We found that in question 1a. The frequency is the number in front of x, which is 3 here. P is the period, just like question 1a. The formula is 2 pi divided by frequency. So 2 pi divided by 3. I, the increment, this is what we're going to count by on the x-axis. It is your period divided by 4. So we are doing 2 pi divided by 3 divided by 4. Now, if you want to, we can plug this into the calculator. Just don't plug in the pi. So we're doing 2/3 divided by 4. Math, enter, enter when you get a decimal, and we get 1/6. So this is going to be 1/6 pi, or we could do just 1 pi over 6. Now the first x I said is always going to be 0. After that, we're going to count by the 1 pi over 6. So we have 1 pi over 6. 1 pi over 6 plus another 1 pi over 6 is 2 pi over 6. 2 pi over 6 plus another 1 pi over 6 is 3 pi over 6. Plus another 1 pi over 6 is 4 pi over 6. And that last one, remember, should equal your period, since we are graphing one cycle, and that is the definition of period. So I'm going to draw out my x and y axis. Just a sketch is fine. We need to get up to +4 and down to -4. We have these 4 dashes of 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, and then 4 pi over 6. We're going to plot our points. So we have the point 0, 0. At 1 pi over 6, we're at -4. 2 pi over 6 is 0. 3 pi over 6 is +4. And 4 pi over 6 is 0. And remember, no straight lines. We should be connecting with a curve. Okay, next question. Same thing, we're graphing the one cycle. So f pi, A is 2, and we're going to multiply those same 5 critical points by the 2. So distributing, you should get 0, 2, 0, -2, 0. This one, however, has a vertical shift of -5, so we're going to subtract 5 from all of these. So 0 minus 5 is -5. 2 minus 5 is -3. 0 minus 5, -5. -2 minus 5 is -7. And 0 minus 5 is -5. Again, these are the y's. So -5, -3, -5, -7, -5. First x is always 0. So now we're going to do the rest of f pi to figure out what we're going to count by. So f, the frequency, the number in front of the x, is 1/3. P, the period, 2 pi divided by the frequency. So 2 pi divided by 1/3. If you need to, go to the calculator. Just do not plug in the pi. And that 1/3 is its own fraction. So I would plug it in with parentheses if I were you. So you should get 6 pi for the period. And then I, the increment, this is what we're ultimately going to be counting by. Period divided by 4. So 6 pi divided by 4, which is 3 pi over 2. So that first x after the 0 is 3 pi over 2. Next, we're going to have another 3 pi over 2. So 3 pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 2 is 6 pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 2 is 9 pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 2 is 12 pi over 2. And again, that should equal your period. 12 divided by 2 is 6. That is equal to 6 pi. So now graphing. Notice my y's have a lot of negatives. So I'm going to put my x-axis up high so I have room for all of these negatives down here. Four dashes. We have all the x's we're going to use in that table we just made. So now plotting our points. At 0, we're down at -5. 3 pi over 2, we're at -3. 6 pi over 2 is -5. 9 pi over 2 is -7. And 12 pi over 2 is -5. Connect with a curve again, no straight lines. Just to point out again, at the -5 here, remember this is your vertical shift, the -5, which also happens to be the midline. The midline and vertical shift are always the same. Even on the last question, the midline was the x-axis, which is at 0, and there was no vertical shift. It had a vertical shift of 0. All right, question 4. Last question, since we said skip 5 and 6. Question 4. What is the maximum height of this graph? Now, height, if we're talking about the graph, is talking about the y's. Height is up and down, the y-axis goes up and down. So this is asking you to essentially just do the a step of f pi. That gets you your y's that we use for graphing. So that's what we are looking at. So my a is 20. Multiply signs, critical points. So we get 0, 20, 0, -20, and 0. And this one has a vertical shift, so we're going to add 45 to all of them. So you get 45, 65, 45, 25, and 45. So the maximum height that this graph is going to reach, looking at my list, the maximum is 65. Hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions, because you're going to have an assessment of quiz tomorrow.